My name is Rebecca Thompson, and I'm 27 years old. At 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night, my phone buzzed with a text that shattered my world: grab your sister and run. Don't trust your mother. The message came from my dad, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. My hands trembled as I read it again, wondering if this was some cruel joke. But something in my gut told me to listen. I threw on clothes, grabbed my keys, and raced through empty streets to my childhood home. What I discovered there would reveal a truth so horrifying, so unthinkable, that it would destroy everything I believed about my family forever. Before we dive into this nightmare that became my reality, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. If this story grabs you like it grabbed my life, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, you won't believe where this journey takes us next. The drive to my family's house in Fairfield, Connecticut felt like traveling through a fever dream. Every red light stretched into eternity while my mind raced with possibilities. Why would Dad warn me about Mom? Helena Thompson had always been controlling, sure, but dangerous? The woman who made perfect Sunday dinners and volunteered at 3 different charities? As a marketing coordinator for a tech company in Manhattan, I prided myself on logical thinking, but nothing about this situation made sense. I'd moved out at 18 precisely because of Mom's suffocating control. She monitored my phone calls, chose my clothes, even tried to pick my college major. Dad had seemed helpless against her iron will, which is why I'd gradually distanced myself from the whole family dynamic. The only person I regretted leaving behind was my younger sister Sophia, who was now 19 and finishing her freshman year at Yale. We texted occasionally, but Mom had always found ways to interfere with our relationship. The house stood dark except for a single light in the kitchen window. Using my old key, I slipped through the back door like a ghost returning to haunt its former life. The familiar scent of Mom's lavender potpourri mixed with something else, something medicinal that made my stomach clench. I crept upstairs, avoiding the 3rd step that had always creaked. Sophia's room was at the end of the hall, and when I pushed open her door, my heart stopped. My beautiful little sister lay unconscious on her bed, her skin pale and clammy, breathing shallow and labored. When I shook her gently, she barely responded, mumbling incoherently about feeling sick. That's when I noticed the glass of water on her nightstand, still half full, with a bitter almond scent that made my blood run cold. "Rebecca? What are you doing here?" Mom's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. She stood in the doorway, perfectly composed despite the late hour, wearing her silk robe and an expression I'd never seen before. Cold. Calculating. Completely void of surprise at finding me here. "What's wrong with Sophia?" I demanded, positioning myself between Mom and my sister's bed. "She's been having health issues," Mom replied smoothly. "Nothing for you to worry about. You should leave now before you cause more drama." But her eyes held a glint that made every instinct scream danger. "What health issues?" "She's 19 years old and was perfectly fine last month when we talked." I kept my voice low but firm, fighting the urge to grab Sophia and run immediately. Mom stepped closer, and I caught that same medicinal smell on her breath. "Sophia has a rare condition. She needs special medication that I've been administering. The doctors say it's touch and go." Her voice carried practiced sympathy, but her body language remained predatory. Something clicked in my mind. The bitter almond scent. The unconscious state. The way Mom spoke about Sophia like she was already dying. "What medication?" I pressed. "Nothing you'd understand," Mom snapped, dropping her maternal facade for just a moment. "You abandoned this family, remember? You don't get to waltz back in here and question my care for my daughter." That's when I saw it. On Sophia's dresser sat a small brown bottle with a pharmacy label. While keeping Mom in my peripheral vision, I grabbed it and read the name, arsenic trioxide. My nursing classes from college rushed back to me. This wasn't medication. This was poison. "You're killing her," I whispered, the words barely escaping my throat. Mom's expression shifted into something terrifying. Gone was any pretense of motherly concern, replaced by cold fury. You always were too smart for your own good, Rebecca. Just like your father. The way she said it made my blood freeze. Where is Dad? Somewhere safe, she said with a smile that belonged in my worst nightmares. Somewhere he can't interfere anymore. I didn't wait to hear more. Scooping Sophia into my arms, I rushed toward the window. Thank God her room was on the first floor. Mom lunged for us, but I kicked out, catching her in the stomach and sending her stumbling backward. Sophia mumbled protests as I half-carried, half-dragged her through the window and to my car. My hands shook as I started the engine. Sophia slumped unconscious in the passenger seat. In the rearview mirror, I saw Mom standing at the front door, phone pressed to her ear, looking nothing like the woman who had raised me. She looked like a stranger. A dangerous stranger who had been systematically poisoning my little sister. The nearest hospital was 15 minutes away, but I made it in 8, running every red light and praying no cops would stop us. As I carried Sophia through the emergency room doors, one thought echoed in my mind: how long had this been going on? And what had happened to Dad when he discovered the truth? St. Mary's emergency room erupted into controlled chaos as I burst through the doors with Sophia's limp body in my arms. Help me. I think my sister's been poisoned. The words felt surreal leaving my mouth, like I was living someone else's nightmare. Within minutes, a team of medical professionals swarmed around us. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, took charge immediately. As they wheeled Sophia away for testing, Dr. Martinez pulled me aside. What kind of poisoning are we looking at? She asked with the kind of professional calm that somehow made everything feel more terrifying. Arsenic, I managed to say, pulling out the bottle I'd grabbed from Sophia's room. I found this in her bedroom. My mother has been giving it to her, claiming it's medication. Dr. Martinez's expression darkened as she examined the bottle. This is definitely arsenic trioxide. How long has she been receiving this? I don't know. Maybe months? My sister's been living at home this year instead of in the dorms. She said she was having health problems, but I thought it was just stress from school. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. How had I missed this? How had I let my estrangement from Mom blind me to Sophia's suffering? The next few hours passed in a blur of blood tests, for drips, and chelation therapy to remove the arsenic from Sophia's system. Dr. Martinez confirmed my worst fears: the poisoning had been systematic and ongoing. Your sister's been receiving small doses over an extended period, she explained. It's a miracle you found her when you did. Another few weeks and the damage might have been irreversible. That's when the real horror began. At 4:30 a.m., Mom arrived at the hospital with a police officer and a performance worthy of an Academy Award. She burst into the waiting room, tears streaming down her face, playing the part of a distraught mother whose daughter had been kidnapped by her mentally unstable older sister. Officer, this is the woman I told you about, Mom sobbed, pointing at me with a trembling finger. She broke into my home and took my sick daughter. Rebecca has been struggling with paranoid delusions for years. She believes I'm trying to hurt Sophia. The police officer, a middle-aged man named Sergeant Williams, looked between us with obvious confusion. Ma'am, your daughter was brought here for arsenic poisoning. The doctors confirmed it. But Mom was ready for this. From her purse, she produced a folder of documents that made my blood run cold. Medical records showing a history of mental health treatment for me that I'd never received. A psychiatrist's report detailing my paranoid episodes and persecution complex. Even a restraining order application claiming I'd been harassing the family. My poor Rebecca has been convinced for months that I'm poisoning Sophia, Mom explained to Sergeant Williams, her voice breaking with perfect timing. She's been making these wild accusations, and I've been trying to get her help, but she won't take her medication. I think she may have actually poisoned Sophia herself to make me look guilty. I stood there, watching my mother fabricate an entire alternate reality with the skill of a master manipulator. Every document looked official. Every tear seemed genuine. If I hadn't known the truth, even I might have believed her. That's not true. I protested, but Sergeant Williams was already looking at me with suspicion. Officer, please. Test her purse, her clothes, her car. You'll find traces of arsenic. She's been systematically poisoning my sister for insurance money. But Mom had thought of everything. Rebecca, honey, you're having another episode. Remember what Dr. Peterson told you about your condition? She turned to the officer with maternal concern. She sometimes believes her own delusions so completely that she can't tell reality from fantasy. When Sophia finally woke up 6 hours later, I thought everything would be resolved. Surely she would tell them the truth about Mom's special medicine and the months of gradually worsening health. But as I rushed to her bedside, my heart shattered at her first words. Why did you do this to me, Becca? Sophia whispered, her voice weak but her eyes filled with accusation. Mom told me you've been sick, but I never thought you'd actually hurt me to get attention. I stared at my little sister in disbelief. Sophia, no. Mom has been poisoning you. I saved you. Remember the bitter medicine she's been giving you every night? That was arsenic. But Sophia just shook her head weakly. Mom's medicine has been helping me. I've been feeling better lately. You're the one who must have put something in my food when you came to the house. Mom warned me you might try something like this. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. My own sister, the person I'd risked everything to save, had been so thoroughly manipulated that she couldn't see the truth even when it nearly killed her. Dr. Martinez was the only person who seemed to sense something wasn't right. She pulled me aside as Sergeant Williams prepared to escort me out of the hospital. Listen to me carefully, she whispered. I've seen cases like this before. The poisoning pattern is consistent with long-term administration, not a single acute dose. And those medical records your mother provided? The paper stock is wrong for documents that old, and the formatting doesn't match our hospital system from that time period. What are you saying? I asked, clinging to this one voice of reason. I'm saying someone has gone to great lengths to build a false narrative. Be very careful. Document everything. Trust no one except yourself right now. She slipped me her business card. Call me if you need someone who understands what chronic poisoning looks like. As Sergeant Williams led me away in handcuffs, charged with breaking and entering and reckless endangerment, I looked back to see Mom comforting Sophia with the perfect picture of maternal love. But for just a moment, when she thought no one was looking, Mom's eyes met mine through the hospital room window. The cold satisfaction in her gaze told me everything I needed to know. This was far from over. In fact, it was just the beginning. 3 days after my arrest, I sat in a dingy coffee shop 20 miles outside Fairfield, waiting for someone I wasn't sure would show up. The restraining order Mom had successfully obtained meant I couldn't go within 500 feet of the family home, Sophia's dorm, or the hospital. Bail had drained my savings, and my job at the tech company was under review pending the outcome of my case. That's when a man in a Yankees cap slid into the booth across from me. At first, I didn't recognize him. The David Thompson who had raised me was clean-shaven with perfectly combed hair and expensive suits. This man had a scraggly beard, worn clothing, and the haunted look of someone who'd been running for a long time. Dad? I whispered, barely believing my eyes. We don't have much time, he said, glancing nervously toward the windows. Helena probably has people watching you, but I had to take the risk. You're the only family I have left who knows the truth. Dad, where have you been? Mom said you were somewhere safe, but that was clearly a lie among many others. I reached across the table, desperate to touch something real in my crumbling world. His laugh was bitter and exhausted. Safe? Rebecca, I've been living in my car for 2 months, moving every few days to stay ahead of her reach. Your mother has been systematically destroying my life piece by piece, just like she tried to destroy yours. Over the next hour, Dad revealed a truth that made the arsenic poisoning seem simple by comparison. For the past 20 years, he'd been living with a woman who was essentially a stranger. Helena Thompson wasn't even her real name. I started suspecting something was wrong about 2 years ago, Dad explained, stirring his coffee with shaking hands. Sophia was getting sick more and more frequently, but Helena always had explanations. Food allergies, stress from school, a weak immune system. She insisted on handling all of Sophia's medical care herself. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" I asked, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. "Because I was scared," he admitted. "And because I was investigating. Rebecca, your mother has been married before. 3 times. All 3 of her previous husbands died under mysterious circumstances. All from gradual health decline that looked natural. All left her substantial insurance payouts." The coffee shop suddenly felt ice cold. "You're saying she's done this before?" I found death certificates, insurance claims, medical records. Helena Morrison, Helena Blackwood, Helena Martinez. Different last names, but the same woman. The same pattern. She marries successful men, slowly poisons family members to collect insurance money, then disappears when suspicion gets too high. Dad pulled out a manila folder from his jacket. "I spent months documenting everything. Financial records showing insurance policies she took out on you and Sophia without my knowledge. Credit card statements showing purchases of various poisons and chemicals. Even photographs of her meeting with people I later identified as known criminals. If you had all this evidence, why didn't you go to the police?" I demanded. "I tried," Dad said, his voice breaking. "I went to the FBI field office in New Haven 3 months ago. Gave them everything I had. 2 weeks later, I was arrested for embezzling from my own pharmaceutical company. Charges I know Helena orchestrated because she had access to my company accounts through our joint finances." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "She used your pharmaceutical connections to get the arsenic. Among other things. Rebecca, your mother is far more dangerous than either of us realized. She's not just a murderer. She's a professional. This is what she does for a living, and she's gotten very good at it over the years." Dad's phone buzzed with a text message. His face went pale as he read it. "We have to leave. Now." "What's wrong?" "Helena knows I'm here. Someone must have seen us together." He grabbed my hand across the table. "Rebecca, listen to me carefully. Our family lawyer, Richard Sterling, has been working with her from the beginning. Don't trust him. Don't trust anyone she's ever introduced you to. And whatever you do, don't try to contact Sophia directly. Helena has her completely under her control now." As we stood to leave, Dad pressed the manila folder into my hands. "This is everything I've gathered. Guard it with your life, because it might be the only thing that can stop her." We separated in the parking lot, Dad disappearing into an old sedan that definitely wasn't his usual BMW. As I drove away, I noticed a black SUV that seemed to be following me. When I turned left, it turned left. When I pulled into a gas station to test my theory, it parked across the street and waited. My phone rang as I sat there, watching my watcher. The caller ID showed Richard Sterling's law office. "Rebecca, thank goodness I reached you," Richard's familiar voice carried its usual warmth. "Your mother is very worried about you. She thinks you might hurt yourself or others during this difficult time. I've arranged for a psychiatric evaluation at Hartford Hospital that could really help your case. Richard, I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. I'm going to fight these charges with a different attorney." There was a pause. "Rebecca, that's really not advisable. Your mother has medical documentation of your condition going back several years. The best thing for everyone, including Sophia, would be for you to get the help you need voluntarily." "What kind of help?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Inpatient treatment. Hartford Hospital has an excellent facility where you can recover from this episode safely. Your mother is willing to drop all charges if you agree to commit yourself for evaluation." I looked across the street at the black SUV, then down at Dad's folder full of evidence. And if I refuse? Then I'm afraid the district attorney will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. Rebecca, you broke into your family's home and took your sister against her will. Add in your documented mental health issues, and you're looking at serious prison time. The trap was perfect. Commit myself to a psychiatric facility where Helena could control my treatment and medication, or go to prison where I'd be equally helpless. Either way, I'd be silenced permanently. I need time to think about it, I said finally. Of course. But don't take too long. The offer expires in 24 hours. As I hung up, I realized Dad had been right about everything. Helena had built an entire support network of corruption around herself. The lawyer, the police, probably doctors and judges and who knows who else. I was fighting a war against an enemy who had been preparing the battlefield for years. But I had one advantage she didn't know about. I finally understood what I was really fighting. The next morning, I woke up to find my apartment door standing wide open. My heart hammered as I crept through rooms that had been systematically searched. Drawers pulled out, papers scattered, even my mattress flipped over. But the real message was on my bathroom mirror, written in what looked like lipstick: "You have 12 hours to accept the deal." I grabbed Dad's evidence folder from its hiding place behind the water heater and fled the building, knowing I could never return safely. My car felt exposed, so I ditched it at a shopping mall and called an Uber to take me to Dr. Martinez at the hospital. "Rebecca, you look terrible," Dr. Martinez said when she saw me in the hospital cafeteria. "What's happened since we last spoke?" I told her everything Dad had revealed about Helena's previous marriages and the systematic murder pattern. Dr. Martinez listened with growing alarm, occasionally asking clarifying questions that showed she understood the medical aspects of long-term poisoning better than I did. "This explains everything I saw in Sophia's blood work," she said finally. "The arsenic levels, the timeline of absorption, even the specific organ damage patterns. Your sister has been receiving carefully calibrated doses designed to mimic natural illness progression. Can you testify to that?" I asked desperately. "I can testify to the medical facts, but that's where my expertise ends. What you need is someone who understands criminal patterns." Dr. Martinez pulled out her phone. "I have a friend who might be able to help. Jake Morrison, former FBI profiler who now works as a private investigator. He specializes in cases involving systematic poisoning and insurance fraud." 2 hours later, I sat in a diner outside Hartford with Jake Morrison, a weather-beaten man in his 50s whose eyes held the kind of sharpness that missed nothing. As I laid out Dad's evidence on the table between us, Jake's expression grew increasingly grim. "Your mother isn't just a serial killer," Jake said finally. "She's what we call a Black Widow type, but more sophisticated than most. These financial records show a level of planning that takes years to execute properly." "Can you help me prove it?" I asked. "Maybe. But first, you need to understand what you're up against. This woman has successfully murdered at least 3 people that we know of, probably more. She's evaded law enforcement for over 2 decades. And she's built a network of corrupt contacts that includes lawyers, doctors, and probably law enforcement officials." Jake spread out photographs from Dad's folder. "Look at this pattern. She typically operates in the same geographic region for 5 to 7 years, builds her network, executes 2 or 3 kills, then disappears completely. But she's been in Connecticut for 8 years now, which means she's either getting ready to vanish again, or something has kept her here longer than usual." "Sophia," I whispered. "The insurance policies Dad found. She's been planning this kill for years, making it look like a natural death." "Exactly. Which means you interrupted her endgame. That makes you extremely dangerous to her continued freedom." Jake leaned forward intently. "Rebecca, this woman will not hesitate to kill you if you become too much of a threat. We need to be very smart about how we proceed." That's when my phone rang. Kelly Patterson, my best friend since college, was calling with panic in her voice. Becca, where are you? Your mom called me looking for you. She says you've been making threats against the family and she's worried you might hurt yourself. Kelly, I'm fine. But I need you to listen carefully. My mother has been poisoning my sister. Everything you think you know about our family is a lie. There was a long pause. Becca, honey, your mom showed me some of your medical records. She's been trying to get you help for months. Maybe you should consider the treatment she's offering? The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Kelly had been my closest friend for 6 years. We'd shared everything, supported each other through breakups and job changes and family drama. But now she was repeating Helena's lies with the same concerned tone as the corrupt lawyer. Kelly, when did my mother contact you about my supposed mental health issues? I asked carefully. She's been calling me for months, asking if you seemed depressed or paranoid when we talked. I thought she was just being a concerned mom, but now she says you've been stalking the family and making violent threats. Jake was watching my face and correctly reading my expression. He mouthed the word compromised and gestured for me to hang up. Kelly, I have to go. Please don't tell my mother you spoke with me. Becca, wait. She asked me to call her if you contacted me. She's just worried about you. I hung up without another word, staring at Jake in disbelief. How did she get to Kelly? They barely know each other. Money. Blackmail. Threats against Kelly's family. Your mother has had months to identify everyone important to you and figure out how to use them against you. Jake gathered up the photos and documents. We need to assume that anyone from your past life is potentially compromised. From now on, you trust no one except people I personally vouch for. Over the next 3 days, Helena's systematic destruction of my life accelerated. My boss called to inform me that I was being terminated for erratic behavior and attendance issues. My landlord received anonymous reports that I was using my apartment for illegal activities. My credit cards were suddenly maxed out with purchases I'd never made. But the worst came when I tried to visit Sophia at the hospital. Security guards escorted me away before I even reached her floor, and Dr. Martinez met me in the parking lot with devastating news. Sophia was discharged this morning against my medical advice, she said grimly. Your mother claimed she was taking her to a specialist in New York for continued treatment. What kind of specialist? I asked, though I already knew the answer would be another lie. That's just it. The doctor she named doesn't exist. I called the medical center she claimed to be transferring to, and they've never heard of him. Jake appeared beside us, having followed me to the hospital. She's moving to the final phase, he said quietly. Helena is going to finish what she started with Sophia, probably within the next few days. And she's going to frame you for it. That night, as I sat in a cheap motel room with evidence spread across the bed, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, Sophia's weak voice came through the speaker. Becca? I think you might have been right about Mom's medicine. Sophia. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm at some kind of private clinic. Mom brought me here for treatment, but the doctors seem strange. And I heard her on the phone talking about insurance payouts and timing. Sophia's voice was getting weaker. Becca, I'm scared. I think she's going to. The line went dead. Jake was already putting on his jacket. Time to stop playing defense, he said grimly. If we're going to save your sister, we need to find out exactly who your mother really is and where she's taken Sophia. And we need to do it tonight. Jake's investigation into Helena's real identity revealed a trail of destruction that spanned 3 decades and multiple states. Using FBI databases he still had access to through former colleagues, we discovered that Helena Thompson was actually Miranda Blackwood, a woman whose criminal history read like a master class in psychological manipulation and murder. Look at this, Jake said, spreading crime scene photos across his office desk. Miami, 1995. Miranda's first husband, a successful real estate developer named Robert Morrison, dies from what appears to be a heart attack. Natural causes, or so it seemed until his daughter from a previous marriage demanded an autopsy 6 months later. The autopsy photos were horrifying. Robert Morrison had been systematically poisoned with digitalis, a heart medication that becomes lethal in the right doses. His daughter suspected something because Robert had been complaining about his new wife's health supplements for months before his death. What happened to the daughter? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Car accident 3 weeks after she filed the autopsy request. Single vehicle crash, very suspicious circumstances, but impossible to prove it wasn't accidental. Jake pulled out another file. Phoenix, 2001. Miranda, now calling herself Helena Martinez, marries wealthy rancher William Blackwood. Same pattern, gradual health decline, mysterious supplements, substantial life insurance payout. But this case had been different. William Blackwood's brother was a retired police detective who had refused to accept the natural causes explanation. Detective Frank Blackwood spent 2 years investigating his brother's death. He gathered enough evidence to have Miranda arrested and charged with murder. How did she escape conviction? I asked. She didn't. Miranda Blackwood was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years to life. Jake's expression was grim. She served 18 months before escaping during a prisoner transport. Been on the FBI's most wanted list ever since. I stared at the mugshot of the woman I'd called mom for 27 years. Same face, same cold eyes, but different hair color and name. So Helena Thompson is a completely fabricated identity? Completely. The real Helena Thompson died in a car accident in Boston in 2003. Miranda stole her identity, used it to get new documents, and created an entirely fictional background. By the time she met your father in 2004, she had become a different person on paper. Jake pulled up financial records on his laptop. Look at this. Over the past 8 years, Miranda has taken out increasingly large insurance policies on both you and Sophia. The total payout for both your deaths would be over $2 million. The numbers made me sick. My own mother had been calculating my worth in terms of insurance money since I was 19 years old. But why wait so long to kill us? Because she learned from her mistakes, Jake explained. The previous cases moved too quickly, which drew suspicion. With your family, she's been playing a much longer game. Establishing herself as the perfect mother and wife, building relationships in the community, creating a paper trail that would support her version of events. What about the systematic poisoning of Sophia? That's her masterpiece. Instead of one sudden death that might look suspicious, she's been creating a documented medical history of Sophia's failing health. When Sophia finally dies, it will look like the tragic end of a long battle with illness. No one will question it because there are years of medical records supporting the narrative. Jake's phone rang, and his expression darkened as he listened to the caller. When he hung up, he turned to me with urgency. That was my contact at Hartford Hospital. Sophia was just admitted to St. Catherine's Private Medical Center under a false name. It's a facility that caters to wealthy families who want privacy for their medical treatment. Is she okay? I asked, grabbing my jacket. For now. But Rebecca, St. Catherine's isn't really a medical facility. It's a place where people with money can have procedures done without oversight or questions. If Miranda has taken Sophia there, it means she's planning to end this tonight. The drive to St. Catherine's took 45 minutes through winding back roads that led to an estate-like facility hidden among old-growth trees. Jake had called ahead to a former FBI colleague who now worked hospital security, arranging for us to get inside through a service entrance. The facility only has 12 beds and minimal staff at night, Jake explained as we approached the building. Miranda probably chose this place because she can control the environment completely. Inside, the facility felt more like an expensive hotel than a hospital. Thick carpets muffled our footsteps as we crept down hallways lined with artwork that probably cost more than most people's cars. Jake's contact, a security guard named Martinez, met us at a service elevator. Your sister is in room 8 on the second floor, Martinez whispered. But there's a problem. The woman claiming to be her mother has been meeting with the night physician for the past hour. They've ordered a special medication protocol that's scheduled to begin at midnight. I looked at the clock on the elevator wall, 11:45 p.m. What kind of medication protocol? Jake asked. I couldn't get specifics, but the pharmacy delivery included potassium chloride and sodium pentobarbital. That combination is typically used for euthanasia, I finished, my blood turning to ice. She's going to kill Sophia tonight and make it look like a mercy killing for her supposed medical condition. We reached the second floor just as a nurse wheeled a medical cart toward room 8. Jake grabbed my arm to hold me back as we watched Helena emerge from the room, now dressed in scrubs and playing the role of concerned mother authorizing end-of-life care for her suffering daughter. Dr. Phillips, I appreciate your discretion in this matter, Helena was saying to the physician beside her. Sophia has been suffering for so long, and the specialists all agree that there's no hope for recovery. This is truly the most merciful option. Through the partially open door, I could see Sophia lying motionless on the hospital bed, her face pale and drawn from months of systematic poisoning. And 4-line was already in place, ready to deliver whatever cocktail Helena had arranged. Jake squeezed my shoulder. We need to call the police and FBI simultaneously. This facility, the fake medical records, the planned euthanasia, it's all evidence we can use too. That's when Helena looked directly at us. For a moment, none of us moved. Helena's face showed no surprise, only the cold calculation I'd begun to recognize as her true expression. Then she smiled. Dr. Phillips, please begin the procedure immediately. The patient's condition has deteriorated rapidly, and we don't want her to suffer unnecessarily. I broke free from Jake's grip and ran toward Sophia's room, but Helena was ready for me. She pressed something into Dr. Phillips' hand and whispered urgently in his ear. Whatever she said made him nod and reach for a syringe that definitely wasn't part of any mercy-killing protocol. Stop! I screamed, but Helena had already locked the door from the inside. Through the window, I watched my mother prepare to kill my sister while simultaneously setting up the perfect frame for my intervention. If Sophia died tonight, Helena would claim I had terrorized them into this desperate final measure. Another perfect manipulation that would solve all her problems at once. Jake was already on the phone with the FBI, but I knew they wouldn't arrive in time. In less than 5 minutes, everything I loved would be gone, and the monster who had raised me would disappear once again into a new identity and a new hunting ground. That's when I realized Helena had made her first real mistake. She had finally revealed herself completely, and she had done it in front of witnesses she couldn't control or eliminate. The real fight was about to begin. Jake kicked down the door to Sophia's room just as Dr. Phillips raised a syringe filled with clear liquid. FBI. Step away from the patient. Jake's voice carried an authority that made the corrupt physician freeze mid-motion, even though Jake was technically retired from the bureau. Helena, however, remained calm. Dr. Phillips, please continue with the procedure. This man is an associate of my mentally ill daughter who has been stalking our family. The patient has signed consent forms for this treatment. Those consent forms are forged. I shouted, rushing to Sophia's bedside. My sister's eyes were open but unfocused, her speech slurred from whatever drugs they'd already given her. Sophia, can you hear me? Tell them you don't want this treatment. Becca? Sophia whispered weakly. I thought you were trying to hurt me. But Mom's medicine, it made me so sick. And she keeps talking about insurance money when she thinks I'm asleep. Helena's mask finally slipped. Sophia, honey, you're hallucinating. The brain damage from your condition is making you paranoid, just like your sister. But Jake was already photographing everything with his phone, the medications on the cart, the forged consent forms, the facility itself. Dr. Phillips, you're about to become an accessory to first-degree murder. The FBI has been looking for this woman for 22 years. Her real name is Miranda Blackwood, and she's wanted for multiple counts of murder across 3 states. The physician looked between Helena and Jake with growing panic. Whatever Helena had paid him, it clearly wasn't worth a murder charge. He set down the syringe and backed away from Sophia's bed. "Security. We need security immediately." Helena called out, but Martinez, Jake's contact, had already disabled the facility's alarm system and was preventing any staff from interfering. Miranda Blackwood, Jake continued, pulling out his phone to show Dr. Phillips the FBI wanted poster, escaped from federal custody in 2003 during transport from Arizona State Prison. She was serving 25 to life for the murder of William Blackwood. The FBI has been tracking her for over 2 decades. Helena's facade cracked completely. Gone was any pretense of being a concerned mother. Her voice turned cold and threatening. "Dr. Phillips, finish the procedure now, or the photos I have of your illegal medication sales to wealthy clients go directly to the DEA tomorrow morning." So that's how she'd gotten him to cooperate. Helena had been building blackmail material on everyone around her, creating a web of corruption and complicity that ensured silence and cooperation. Jake stepped between Helena and Dr. Phillips. "Doctor, I can offer you immunity in exchange for cooperation with the federal investigation. But that offer expires the moment you touch that syringe." Dr. Phillips threw up his hands. "I want a lawyer. I'm not doing anything else until I have legal representation." Helena's eyes darted toward the window, calculating escape routes. But Jake had anticipated this. "The building is surrounded," he said calmly. "FBI agents are positioned at every exit. Your only option now is to cooperate." It was a bluff. Jake hadn't had time to coordinate with active bureau agents, but Helena didn't know that. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely rattled. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," Helena said, her voice taking on a menacing quality I'd never heard before. "I have connections throughout law enforcement, the legal system, and the medical community. Even if you arrest me tonight, I'll be released within 24 hours. And then I'll disappear, and you'll never find me again." "Maybe," Jake replied. "But your daughter won't disappear. Neither will the evidence. And the FBI doesn't give up on cases like this, especially when there are living witnesses." That's when Helena made her most desperate move. She grabbed a scalpel from the medical cart and lunged toward Sophia's foreline. If she couldn't administer the lethal injection, she would simply cut the line and claim Sophia had died from medical complications. But I was ready for her. 27 years of living with a predator had taught me to watch for sudden movements and deadly intentions. I caught Helena's wrist before the scalpel reached the foreline, and for the first time in my life, I fought back physically against the woman who had terrorized my family. Helena was stronger than she looked, but months of fear and rage gave me adrenaline-fueled strength. We struggled over the scalpel as Jake called for backup and Dr. Phillips fled the room completely. The medical cart overturned, sending bottles and syringes crashing to the floor. "You stupid girl," Helena hissed as we grappled. "You have no idea how much money you've cost me. Years of planning, ruined by your father's paranoia and your interference." "Good," I grunted, managing to knock the scalpel away from both of us. "I hope it cost you everything." That's when real FBI agents finally arrived, having been alerted by Jake's calls and the facility security breach. 6 agents in tactical gear swarmed the room, weapons drawn, shouting commands for everyone to get on the ground. Helena immediately switched back to victim mode. "Officers, thank God you're here. This woman attacked me and has been trying to hurt my sick daughter. Please protect us from her." But Agent Sarah Chen, the lead investigator, was already studying the evidence Jake had photographed. "Miranda Blackwood, also known as Helena Thompson, you're under arrest for escaping federal custody, multiple counts of murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud." As they handcuffed Helena, she looked at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Rebecca. I know people you can't even imagine. Prison won't hold me forever, and when I get out, I'll finish what I started." Agent Chen read Helena her rights while paramedics assessed Sophia's condition. My sister was weak but stable. The antidotes Dr. Martinez had recommended working to counteract the arsenic and other toxins in her system. Is she really going to prison this time? I asked Agent Chen as they led Helena away. If we can prove everything you and Mr. Morrison claim, she'll never see freedom again, Agent Chen replied. But building a federal case takes time, and her network of corrupt contacts is extensive. We'll need you and your sister to testify, and we'll need to locate your father to corroborate the financial evidence. As the FBI agents processed the crime scene and collected evidence, I sat beside Sophia's hospital bed, holding her hand and watching her color slowly return to normal. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to hope that the nightmare might actually be over. But Helena's final words echoed in my mind, "This isn't over." Something in her tone suggested she had one last card to play, even from behind bars. The woman who had successfully manipulated law enforcement, medical professionals, and legal systems across multiple states for decades wasn't going to give up easily. The real battle for justice was just beginning. 2 weeks after Helena's arrest, I thought we had finally won. Sophia was recovering in a legitimate hospital under round-the-clock security. Dad had emerged from hiding to provide testimony to the FBI, and Agent Chen assured us that they had enough evidence to convict Helena on multiple federal charges. The nightmare that had consumed our family was supposed to be over. I should have known better. At 3 a.m. on a Thursday morning, my phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, text messages from numbers I didn't recognize, and a call from Agent Chen that made my blood freeze. "Rebecca, we have a problem," Agent Chen said without preamble. "Miranda Blackwood made bail 2 hours ago." "How is that possible?" I demanded, sitting up in the safe house bed where I'd been staying since Helena's arrest. "You said she was being held without bail on federal charges." Her legal team, and it's a very expensive, very connected legal team, filed an emergency appeal claiming prosecutorial misconduct and violation of her constitutional rights. They argued that the evidence was obtained through illegal surveillance and that her arrest was politically motivated. I felt the walls closing in around me. "Agent Chen," she threatened to finish what she started. "If she's out of prison, we have protective details on you, your sister, and your father." "But Rebecca, there's something else. 20 minutes ago, Sophia's hospital room was found empty. She's missing." The phone slipped from my numb fingers. Helena had been in federal custody for 2 weeks, monitored and supposedly neutralized, but somehow she had still managed to orchestrate Sophia's disappearance from a secure hospital floor. Jake burst through the safe house door before I could even process the full implications. "We need to move. Now." Helena's people hit 3 FBI safe houses simultaneously. "This place is compromised." As we fled through the back door, Jake explained the coordinated attack that had caught federal agents completely off guard. She had backup plans within backup plans. Financial accounts we didn't know about, criminal contacts across multiple states, even corruption inside federal facilities. The woman we arrested was just the tip of the iceberg. "Where's my sister?" I asked as we drove through empty streets toward an unknown destination. "That's the worst part," Jake replied grimly. "Sophia wasn't kidnapped. According to hospital security footage, she left voluntarily with a woman claiming to be a family friend. Someone she clearly trusted." He handed me a tablet showing hospital surveillance video. In grainy black and white, I watched my sister walk out of the hospital arm in arm with a middle-aged woman I didn't recognize. Sophia appeared alert and willing, even helping her companion carry a small suitcase. "Who is that woman?" I demanded. "Dr. Elizabeth Carter, a psychiatrist who's been treating Helena in federal custody. Apparently, she's been convinced that Helena is the victim of a family conspiracy, and that you and your father have been systematically abusing her for years." The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. Even from prison, Helena had managed to turn her own psychiatric evaluation into a recruitment tool, convincing her therapist that she was the innocent victim of an elaborate frame job. "Dr. Carter believes she's rescuing Sophia from an abusive family situation," Jake continued. Helena has probably convinced her that the hospital is part of the conspiracy, and that Sophia needs to be hidden somewhere safe until the truth comes out. My phone rang with a call from an unknown number. When I answered, Helena's voice came through with crystalline clarity. "Hello, Rebecca. I trust you've discovered that your sister is no longer available for your visits?" "Where is she?" I said through gritted teeth. "Sophia is safe and receiving proper care from someone who understands her actual medical needs. Dr. Carter has been very helpful in explaining how childhood trauma can create false memories and paranoid delusions." "Helena, if you hurt her..." "I'm not going to hurt anyone, dear. In fact, I'm about to prove my innocence once and for all. You see, tomorrow evening I'm hosting a charity fundraiser for victims of false accusations. Several prominent judges, law enforcement officials, and medical professionals will be attending. Many of them have become quite concerned about the rush to judgment in my case." I could practically hear the smile in her voice. Helena was about to make her final play, using her network of corrupt contacts to publicly rehabilitate her image while simultaneously destroying any credibility I might have as a witness. The fundraiser will feature a special guest appearance by Sophia, who will explain to everyone how her sister's mental illness led to false accusations against her loving mother. It should be quite moving. "Sophia will never do that willingly," I said, but even as I spoke, I remembered how thoroughly Helena had manipulated her before. "Won't she? Rebecca, your sister spent the first 19 years of her life believing I was a devoted mother. Do you really think 2 weeks in a hospital can undo that level of conditioning? Especially when she's receiving proper medication for her supposed arsenic poisoning from a qualified psychiatrist?" The implication hit me like a physical blow. Dr. Carter wasn't just hiding Sophia, she was treating her with psychiatric medications that would make her more susceptible to manipulation and false memory implantation. "You're drugging her again," I whispered. "I'm ensuring she receives appropriate treatment for the psychological trauma you and your father inflicted on her. By tomorrow evening, Sophia will remember the truth about our family. The real truth, not the paranoid fantasies you've been feeding her." Helena's plan was diabolically perfect. If Sophia appeared at a public event surrounded by judges and law enforcement officials, contradicting everything she had said about the poisoning, it would destroy the federal case completely. Helena would emerge not just acquitted, but as a sympathetic victim of false accusations. "Where is this fundraiser happening?" I demanded. "The Mayflower Hotel in Hartford. 7 p.m. Black tie optional, but I do hope you'll dress nicely if you decide to attend. It will be our last family gathering, after all." The line went dead. Jake was already pulling up information about the Mayflower Hotel on his laptop. Upscale venue, multiple exit points, and the kind of high-security event where Helena's people can control access completely. If we're going to stop her, we need to get to Sophia before the fundraiser begins. "How?" I asked. "She'll have security, corrupt officials providing protection, and probably enough psychiatric drugs in Sophia's system to make her believe anything Helena tells her." "Because Helena made one crucial mistake," Jake said with a grim smile. "She told us exactly when and where she's going to be. For the first time since this started, we know her location in advance." I looked at the FBI safe house burning in the distance, then at my reflection in the car window. 2 weeks ago, I had been a marketing coordinator living a normal life. Now I was a fugitive planning to infiltrate a charity fundraiser to save my sister from a serial killer who happened to be my mother. "What's the plan?" I asked. "We're going to crash Helena's party," Jake replied. "And we're going to make sure it's her last performance." The Mayflower Hotel ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and formal wear as Hartford's elite gathered for what they believed was a charity fundraiser for victims of false accusations. I watched from the service kitchen, wearing a catering uniform Jake had acquired through connections I didn't want to know about, as Helena worked the room like the professional manipulator she was. She looked every inch the grieving mother wrongfully accused, dressed in elegant black with just enough vulnerability in her posture to garner sympathy from the judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement officials she had clearly been cultivating for years. I counted at least 3 people I recognized from newspaper coverage of my case, all nodding sympathetically as Helena spun her web of lies. Target acquired, Jake's voice came through my earpiece. He was positioned as hotel security, using credentials provided by Agent Chen's task force. Sophia is in the Windsor suite on the 3rd floor. 2 guards posted outside, but they look like private security, not federal agents. What about Dr. Carter? I whispered, pretending to arrange champagne glasses while scanning the crowd for threats. She's in the ballroom, sitting at the head table next to the district attorney. Helena has her completely convinced that she's protecting Sophia from a dangerous family conspiracy. Through the service doors, I could see Dr. Carter, a well-meaning woman in her 60s whose genuine concern for her patients had been weaponized against my family. Helena had probably shown her carefully edited recordings, forged medical documents, and coached testimony that painted me as an unstable woman targeting an innocent mother. Agent Chen's voice crackled through the comm system. Federal teams are in position at all exits, but we can't move until we have Sophia secure. If Helena suspects a raid, she might activate whatever contingency plan she has for your sister. The evening's program was scheduled to begin at 8 p.m. with a presentation about false accusations and their impact on families. Helena would speak first, followed by what the program described as a brave young woman sharing her story of recovery from family trauma. That was Sophia's cue to publicly recant everything she had said about the poisoning. At 7:45, I made my move toward the service elevator that would take me to the 3rd floor. But as the elevator doors opened, I found myself face to face with the last person I expected to see, my father. "Dad? What are you doing here?" I whispered as he stepped into the elevator beside me. "Same thing you are," he replied grimly. "Helena called me this morning with an ultimatum. Show up tonight and publicly apologize for my false accusations, or Sophia dies in what will look like a tragic suicide brought on by family trauma." The elevator climbed toward the 3rd floor as Dad explained Helena's final manipulation. "She is Sophia convinced that you and I have been planning to kill her for insurance money, and that Helena has been protecting her from us. Dr. Carter believes she's treating a victim of severe psychological abuse." "How is that possible?" "Sophia knows the truth about the poisoning. Psychiatric medications can alter memory formation and retrieval," Dad said with the grim knowledge of someone who had watched Helena manipulate minds for years. "Helena probably has Sophia on a cocktail of drugs that make her more susceptible to suggestion while suppressing recent memories." The elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor, revealing a hallway lined with expensive artwork and thick carpet that muffled our footsteps. The Windsor suite was at the end of the corridor, guarded by 2 men in expensive suits who looked more like mob enforcers than legitimate security. "How do we get past them?" I whispered. "Leave that to me," Dad replied, walking confidently toward the guards as if he belonged there. "Gentlemen, Helena sent me to check on Sophia before the presentation. She wants to make sure her daughter is ready for her public appearance." The guards exchanged glances. One of them spoke into a radio, presumably checking with Helena downstairs. After a moment, he nodded and stepped aside. 5 minutes, the guard said. "Ms. Thompson wants the girl downstairs by 8 p.m. sharp." Inside the suite, I found my sister sitting on an ornate sofa, staring out the window with the vacant expression of someone heavily medicated. She looked fragile and confused, her eyes struggling to focus when she saw us enter. "Becca? Dad?" Sophia's voice was slurred and uncertain. "I thought. Dr. Carter said you were dangerous. That you've been trying to hurt me and Mom." I knelt beside her, fighting back tears at seeing my vibrant sister reduced to this drugged shadow of herself. "Sophia, listen to me carefully. Do you remember being in the hospital? Do you remember telling me about Mom's medicine making you sick?" Sophia pressed her hands to her temples, clearly struggling with conflicting memories. "Dr. Carter says those were false memories implanted by psychological abuse. But sometimes I remember things differently. I remember being scared of Mom's special drinks. Dad sat on Sophia's other side, speaking gently but urgently. Sweetheart, Helena has been giving Dr. Carter false information to make her believe we're the dangerous ones. The woman downstairs isn't your mother. Her real name is Miranda Blackwood, and she's a convicted murderer. That's impossible, Sophia whispered, but her voice carried uncertainty rather than conviction. I pulled out my phone and showed her the FBI wanted poster Jake had given me. This is the same woman, Sophia. Look at the photo. Helena Thompson is a stolen identity. She's been planning to kill you for insurance money since you were 11 years old. Sophia stared at the image, her medicated mind struggling to process the information. But she loves me. She's always taking care of me. Even when I was sick. She made you sick, Dad said firmly. With arsenic. The same poison she used to kill 3 other husbands in 3 different states. Through the suite's windows, I could see news vans arriving in the hotel parking lot. Helena had clearly invited media coverage to ensure maximum exposure for her vindication performance. If Sophia appeared on camera recanting her testimony against Helena, the damage would be impossible to undo. We need to get her out of here now, I said, helping Sophia to her feet. She was unsteady but mobile, the psychiatric drugs affecting her coordination and judgment but not completely incapacitating her. That's when Helena's voice echoed through the hotel's sound system, beginning her presentation to the assembled crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight to address one of the most serious problems facing our justice system: false accusations that destroy innocent families. On the suite's television, which was broadcasting the ballroom feed, I watched Helena command the room with practiced emotion. My own family has been torn apart by the paranoid delusions of a daughter who refuses to accept treatment for her mental illness. Tonight, my youngest daughter will share her story of recovery and healing, despite the trauma inflicted by her own sister. The guards outside our door would expect Sophia to be brought downstairs within minutes. Helena's entire plan depended on my sister making a public appearance that would discredit everything we had fought to expose. But as I looked at Sophia, I saw something that gave me hope. Behind the confusion and medication, anger was beginning to surface. Anger at being manipulated, drugged, and used as a weapon against her own family. I remember now, Sophia said slowly, her voice growing stronger. The bitter taste in the water. Feeling sick every time I came home from school. Mom always had an excuse, always had a reason why I needed her special medicine. Dad squeezed her hand. We're going to get you out of here, sweetheart. But we need to move fast. From the ballroom below, Helena's voice continued her performance. False accusations don't just harm the accused. They traumatize entire families and undermine faith in our justice system. Tonight, we take a stand against this epidemic of manufactured outrage. The applause from her audience was thunderous. Helena had spent years building relationships with these people, earning their trust and support. They had no reason to doubt her story because she had become exactly the kind of person they would naturally believe and protect. But she had made one critical error in her perfect plan. She had brought Sophia, the key witness to her crimes, to a location where federal agents could finally reach her safely. Ready? I asked, taking Sophia's arm as Dad moved toward the door. Ready, she replied, and for the first time in weeks, my sister sounded like herself again. The final confrontation with Helena was about to begin, but this time, we wouldn't be fighting alone. 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse plaza watching Helena Thompson, Miranda Blackwood, being led away in shackles after receiving 5 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The federal jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours before finding her guilty on all counts. Multiple murders, attempted murder, insurance fraud, identity theft, and escape from federal custody. The evidence had been overwhelming once Sophia recovered enough to testify clearly about the systematic poisoning. Dr. Martinez's medical testimony, Dad's financial documentation, and Jake's investigation into Helena's previous identities had painted a picture of a predator so calculating and methodical that even her own defense attorneys seemed relieved when the verdict was announced. How does it feel to finally see justice? A reporter asked as I descended the courthouse steps with my family. It feels like the beginning of healing, I replied honestly. For too long, we lived in fear of someone we should have been able to trust completely. Now we can start rebuilding our lives without looking over our shoulders. Sophia, standing beside me with color restored to her cheeks and clarity returned to her eyes, squeezed my hand. I want other families to know they're not alone if they're going through something like this. Abusers are skilled at making you doubt your own reality, but the truth always finds a way to surface if you're brave enough to keep fighting for it. The months of recovery hadn't been easy for any of us. Sophia required extensive medical treatment to reverse the damage from chronic arsenic poisoning, as well as therapy to process the psychological manipulation she had endured. Dad struggled with guilt over not recognizing Helena's true nature sooner, working with a counselor to understand how sophisticated predators can deceive even the most vigilant people. For myself, the healing process involved learning to trust again. Helena had corrupted my understanding of family, love, and safety so thoroughly that every relationship felt potentially dangerous. But with the help of Dr. Martinez, who had become not just a medical advisor but a true friend, I slowly began to distinguish between healthy support and manipulative control. Jake Morrison played an enormous role in our recovery as well. His experience with similar cases helped us understand that Helena's manipulation tactics were textbook examples of predatory behavior, not evidence of our own weakness or stupidity. She was a professional, Jake reminded us during family therapy sessions. You survived something that has destroyed other families completely. That takes incredible strength. The relationship that developed between Jake and me grew naturally from shared trauma into something deeper and more meaningful. He understood the hypervigilance that came with surviving a predator, the way certain phrases or behaviors could trigger memories of manipulation, and the importance of building trust slowly and transparently. Dr. Elizabeth Carter, the psychiatrist Helena had manipulated into helping with Sophia's disappearance, also became an unexpected ally in our healing process. Once she understood how thoroughly Helena had deceived her, Dr. Carter dedicated herself to understanding and documenting the manipulation techniques that had made her an unwitting accomplice. Her research would eventually help other mental health professionals recognize similar patterns of deception. Helena showed me exactly what I wanted to see, Dr. Carter explained during one of our sessions. She identified my professional blind spots and exploited them perfectly. It's a humbling reminder that even trained professionals can be fooled by sufficiently sophisticated manipulation. The civil litigation that followed Helena's conviction resulted in substantial settlements from the corrupt lawyers, doctors, and officials who had enabled her crimes. Rather than keeping the money, our family established a foundation to support other survivors of long-term abuse and to fund research into the psychological and medical effects of systematic poisoning. Sophia returned to Yale the following semester, initially planning to major in psychology to better understand what had happened to our family. But she ultimately chose to study journalism, driven by a desire to investigate and expose predators who prey on vulnerable families. I want to be the person who asks the hard questions that everyone else is afraid to ask, she told me during one of our weekly sister dinners. Dad, meanwhile, used his pharmaceutical industry knowledge to consult with law enforcement agencies on cases involving poisoning and medical fraud. The experience of being Helena's victim had given him insights that proved invaluable in identifying similar patterns of abuse in other families. For my own part, I discovered a passion for victim advocacy that led me to law school. Working with families who had survived systematic abuse felt like the most meaningful way to transform our trauma into something that could help others. My first-hand experience with Helena's manipulation tactics made me particularly effective at recognizing when clients were being gaslit or psychologically controlled by their abusers. The foundation we established also funded research into the long-term effects of chronic low-dose poisoning, helping medical professionals recognize symptoms that might otherwise be attributed to stress or natural illness. Dr. Martinez led much of this research, determined to ensure that future victims wouldn't suffer for months or years before receiving proper diagnosis and treatment. Helena's case taught us that evil can hide behind the most convincing mask of respectability, Dr. Martinez explained during a medical conference presentation. But it also taught us that families have incredible resilience when they support each other through the healing process. 1 year after Helena's conviction, we gathered for our first truly peaceful family dinner since the nightmare began. The table was set with mismatched dishes in our new home, a place Helena had never been, could never contaminate with her presence. Dad had prepared his famous lasagna, Sophia brought homemade bread from her college cooking class, and I contributed a salad that didn't require checking every ingredient for potential toxins. Jake joined us, as did Dr. Martinez and her family, along with Agent Chen and several other people who had become chosen family through our shared experience of fighting for justice. The conversation flowed naturally between updates on work and school, plans for upcoming vacations, and gentle teasing about Dad's tendency to oversalt everything. "Remember when we used to check every glass of water twice before drinking it?" Sophia said with a laugh that held no bitterness, only amazement at how far we had traveled from that dark place. "I still do that sometimes," I admitted. "But now it's just habit, not fear." "That's okay," Dr. Martinez said gently. "Hypervigilance can be adaptive when it doesn't control your life. You've learned to distinguish between reasonable caution and paralyzing anxiety." As the evening wound down and our guests prepared to leave, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this moment of peace. Helena had tried to destroy our family through systematic manipulation, poisoning, and psychological abuse. She had nearly succeeded in turning us against each other while covering her tracks so well that she could have continued killing indefinitely. But she had underestimated the power of truth persistently pursued and family bonds that refused to break under pressure. She had also underestimated the courage of strangers who were willing to risk their own safety to protect vulnerable people they barely knew. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked as we cleared the dinner dishes together. "How lucky we are to be alive," I replied honestly. "And how grateful I am for everyone who refused to let Helena's version of reality become the only version." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dad hadn't sent that text message?" Sophia asked. I considered this carefully. I think we would have found another way to discover the truth eventually. Helena was getting more desperate and making more mistakes. The poisoning was escalating to the point where someone would have noticed. "But we might not have all survived to see justice," Sophia pointed out. That was true. Helena's timeline had been accelerating toward a conclusion that would have left her wealthy and free while our family was destroyed by death and false accusations. Dad's decision to warn me despite the personal risk had changed everything. "I've learned that evil requires secrecy to flourish," I said as we loaded the dishwasher. Once Helena's actions were exposed to daylight, her power evaporated. She could only manipulate people who didn't have all the information. So the lesson is to keep asking questions and sharing information, even when powerful people tell you to stop? Especially then, I confirmed. 3 years later, I graduated from law school and opened a practice specializing in representing abuse survivors. Jake and I married in a small ceremony attended only by the chosen family we had built through shared trauma and healing. Sophia completed her journalism degree and landed a position with an investigative news team that specializes in exposing corruption and abuse of power. Dad met and married a wonderful woman named Catherine, a social worker who understood his need to process the betrayal he had experienced and who shared his commitment to protecting vulnerable families. Their relationship provided a positive model of what healthy partnership looks like after experiencing manipulation and control. Helena remains in federal prison, her appeals exhausted and her network of criminal contacts gradually exposed and prosecuted. Occasionally, she sends letters attempting to re-establish contact or maintain her innocence, but these go directly to authorities as potential evidence of ongoing criminal thinking. The most important lesson I learned from surviving Helena's predation is that healing from systematic abuse requires community. No one recovers from such extensive trauma alone. It takes a team of supporters, medical professionals, law enforcement officers, friends, chosen family, and fellow survivors, to counter the isolation and reality distortion that predators create around their victims. If you're currently in a situation where someone is systematically undermining your reality, making you question your own perceptions, or gradually isolating you from support systems, please